America is dying and Bitcoin killed it is quite the title. But let me go ahead and just philosophically kind of pitch this forward. I've watched almost all of the podcasts related to cryptocurrencies. Almost all of them. Hours, thousands of hours. Thousands and thousands. And let me just tell you a little story where a archetype that occurs frequently is that democratic societies usually are at their best or at their peak or most unified when there's an external threat. And for a very, very, very long time, we really haven't had an external threat. Not a serious one. We've had ones where, despite the fact that people think that there are issues now with China or Russia, really, this is just more, to me, feels to be a symptom of the fact that we haven't had as serious issues as we have had in, when you look at a historical frame of reference rather than just, more topical of what's going on right now. Right now, it's just like speculation, right? Back then, it was, dirty things were being done, and every day, and there was panic, and you could feel that. The nation could feel that. And we feel a sense of turmoil right now, but it's more social and maternal, right? Which is scary because that's the only way empires fall. Empires don't fall to outside forces. They fall from within. And so it's really important to consider that when everyone's theorizing about China and stuff. They're just not well educated on these things. And people don't like to talk about the philosophical, but it is probably the most essential thing to talk about. Okay, when people talk about finance, they need to be talking about people, and when they talk about microeconomics, at the end of the day, they need to be talking about philosophy. These are the most basal things that underlie these things, and so philosophy is what underlines the cryptocurrencies too. So if you kind of roll your eyes at some of the philosophical things, understand that you're probably just not being thoughtful enough about these things to really come to the full realization of how essential it is to be well informed on these things, or at least to be open-minded about it. So the thing with Bitcoin is U.S. used to represent hope, and now Bitcoin does. We believe so little in humanity that we've offshored truth to a coded program, and we dislike ourselves so much that we're happy that we don't know who made it, because then we can pretend like some mysterious, omniscient entity created it. The more I think about it, the more it seems unnerving. The more it makes me question it. The more I'm like, maybe we are making a mistake. You have to understand, no one during the .com bubble thought that it was stupid. It's easy for us to look back then and say those people are stupid. Almost every single bubble, it's really easy to say something like that. And I just can't help but just be slightly off-put. Now, I've heard Mike Green debate this a lot about the cryptocurrencies, and he keeps pushing back because he keeps saying, how do you know? Because everyone wants to go back to the gold standard, right? And Bitcoin's supposed to bring us back to the gold standard. And in my last podcast, I said maybe that isn't important because Bitcoin only needs to be the underlying operator. And that might also be misplaced. Because whether or not a gold standard is the proper way to set up what's essential from the cryptocurrencies in my frame of reference as someone who isn't as well affiliated with the coding aspects. Although I have learned about all the proofs, I do understand the engineering behind the design of Bitcoin and a lot of the other cryptocurrencies. The thing that still escapes me, though, so the proper utility I think of that is the ability to not have to use banks or different third parties that have to help with the transfer and movement of money. Everything's more direct and streamlined. It creates a lot less friction, and it actually is a big stimulant to economies because of that. It helps with growth massively. And so but Bitcoin isn't that. But then there is things built on Bitcoin that could help with that. And then the other things that they also provide is privacy, and people are worried about the crime. But I mean, we just honestly, I mean, yes, it's good that they bring that up, but we also can't listen to them. We have to ignore them because privacy is more important than the crime. It does more good than bad, and I mean, that's just life. Lots of things that do good also cost bad. So you just have to accept that. Cars cause accidents. We don't not have cars because of it, okay? We do have discussions on how to make it safe, on how to help limit that, and just like we can limit the communication, or we can, not communication, we can prevent corporate crime or massive crime or systematic crime because it's easier to track money flow through businesses or through a valid economy. So only underground crime will occur with those, and those at least won't impact entire societies. And that's important. I mean, that's just a trade-off. So there, just like with the car metaphor, there are ways to make it safer and to work around that and navigate around that. And just because that there is crime doesn't mean that you shouldn't use it, right? Okay, so moving on past that, this idea that Bitcoin can't be manipulated is another interesting one, because it also kind of means that it could become stagnant. Like, what's to prevent? Like you say, you can't take someone's Bitcoin because you'll need multiple people to do it and blah, blah, blah. And the thought process that will just make governments more violent is a valid one, in my opinion. And yeah, and I'm still so caught up on this idea that we've outsourced hope. Because America used to be hope, but then we became self-hating and started throwing just throwing ourselves under the bus constantly. We don't need to do that. The rest of the world does that. And the rest of the world is pretty terrifying sometimes, as we are as well. Yes, we have a terrible past, but holy cow, learn about the world, learn about history, pay attention to it, try reading it, open any book, please do a Google search. History is terrifying. The human capacity for evil and destruction and nefarious act. I mean, it's pretty bottomless. If you're religious, I would say that we are, just as the Bible would indicate, we are very capable of making hell on here, but we are incapable of making a heaven. So stop trying to make a heaven. These people that are after utopias or think that they can make a perfect planet are the reason things have to get worse and worse and worse, because they make everything worse and worse and worse, because they chase things that they will never achieve. And whether or not you're religious really doesn't change the reality of that either. So, there are a lot of people who, So, keeping philosophical, I think it's concerning. I don't think philosophically Bitcoin holds up. I don't know where to place it. And I've heard all the podcasts. I think Mike Green gave the best defense, but I also think that there's just so many people that are so adamant about the different cryptocurrencies and their utilization. But I also have to wonder, okay, if we assume that Bitcoin is the ultimate democracy where everyone has a say, what happens to democracies when there's not an external threat? They become, what we are now. A mess. They lose their identity. We've lost our identity and solidarity, both in the government, but both in, the heart of the people, in multiple ways. Think about how we talk about identity even in this country. It's different from the rest of the world. I don't think that that's like happenstance. Maybe it is happenstance, but it is worth noting because we're looking for hope, and Bitcoin is supposed to be that. But it's almost like, some people choose not to pay attention to the news, or choose to pay attention to, or choose to think about philosophy because they don't want to participate in that, right? They just want to live their lives or whatever. But choosing to not participate in a system that you are already in and already a participant of is taking a negative role. It's inherently negative. You can't. It's like money. If you making the same salary every year is you regressing because of inflation. You choosing to not participate in society is not a neutral position. It's a negative because you are already a participant in the system. And so your lack of you are already a participant in the system. So your lack of assuming a role or duty within it is a hindrance on the greater system. It is an issue. And with just as that becomes more apparent in a democracy, I think that there could be issues with Bitcoin as it progresses, because we have to remember that right now Bitcoin does well. I think Bitcoin, like a democracy, does well right now because of all the external threats it faces and the solidarity it gains because of it. And I wonder what happens to that solidarity if the U.S. can clean up its act, or if, that they even pitch it as hope, right? What happens if we start to believe in us again? We hit golden periods. We actually decide to have some self-worth and recognize ourselves, not for our moments of tragedy, but for our perseverance through history as a piece of humanity. And I think we could slide back into that. And then when that occurs, I wonder what happens to something like Bitcoin. Why would we not move to something that is more just in general, just more based around the utility? Do we really want another gold standard? I don't really know if we really want to go with gold standard. And just like Mike Green said, I don't know if another gold standard will work. And they call it the new, like it's the new internet. And then, even the class I'm going to teach on the 14th, I guess we'll get into that. But other cryptocurrencies service different roles, but they're on the baseline that Bitcoin is the underlying feature. But there are lots of cryptocurrencies that don't need Bitcoin at all, but don't function with it, and they work both on and off chain. And I think that's worth considering as well. I don't know if any of the other attacks against Bitcoin really hold up as well, but I am both thinking this out loud right now. So keep in mind, I'm not set on anything. I am in an ambiguous spot. I've been back and forth many, many times, and now I'm just, this is what makes good investors, is these mental games, these puzzles, and trying to solve them and figure out, just trying to scrutinize beliefs. I still hold some Bitcoin. I don't see how Ethereum could truly fall apart from its positioning right now. I don't see what could slow down Solana. But I am starting to see issues with Bitcoin and its stagnation because it won't change. Now, everything they build on top of it could change. But do we really want another gold standard? I guess is the big question. Does money need to be based off a scarce resource that is divided in such a way that there is always an opportunity for a greater force to take control over the majority of the wealth. And the harder it is to get the Bitcoin, the harder it is to take away the greater majority of that wealth. Like, that's the other side of it. Because everyone says, well, they can't get my Bitcoin because, because they can't get my key or whatever. But it's like, well, how do you know they already didn't buy most of it already? Or when they do start to buy it, sure, they can't take everyone's, but they might be able to take enough. And the average person will need to spend their Bitcoin. But the average rich person never needed to spend their gold because they have tons of money. When you have tons of money, you have tons of opportunity. People will give you loans, and then you never have to spend your own money. They'll never have to spend their Bitcoin, but the average person might have to spend their Bitcoin because they won't have the same amount of opportunities to take out loans. That is what I kind of see could occur. Because people think that it was just a huge mistake to leave the gold system. And, yeah, I'm starting to really think about that. That is a very subjective view. No matter which way you look at it, it's a very subjective view. But your view on that, I think, it will be very essential to how the Bitcoin plays out. So I am battling that out. It's really hard to. It's a really tough one to call. Because you could still say that Bitcoin serves a role as like a replacement for treasury securities, but it isn't a nation state that can back that up. But it does create, in theory, a good replacement product for that, so long as the adoption holds out. The other thing is, like, when it falls apart, it just falls apart. If it starts to not be used, there'll be a huge liquidity issue. So getting out of an asset, if it crashes, will be a lot harder than the stock market, which most people will assume this. Most people would assume the market crashes. Most people will assume that it'll eventually come back. If a cryptocurrency crashes, that assumption will probably be a lot more vacant from the institutions who provide most of the liquidity in the markets, despite the fact that there is a lot of retail. I think even in the current cryptocurrency environment, a lot of it is institutional, and a lot of the selling is more retail. And I mean, in the foreign countries around the world, they are constantly selling cryptocurrencies just in an effort to grab US dollars. And some of the countries do similar things. That's what China was doing with its massive mining. It wasn't keeping anything. It was selling it for US dollars because it needed US dollars, for like their steel trade with Australia. So that's another thing to further unpack. It's not technical, though. I can hear all the technical people saying that that's ridiculous. And I can hear a lot of economists saying that it's also ridiculous. But nonetheless, philosophy has a weird way of always playing out the same way. Just like some people still naively and immaturely like communism, but communism doesn't work because you create a power vacuum, and then that it might work in its first iteration, but the second iteration you can't control who will compete for that power vacuum, and you can't be certain that someone nefarious enters that position. You also can't, and you also have to realize that like people like Hitler weren't nefarious right away, and that they took on the embodiment of the mob and the people, because you can't just get on stage and say horrendous things like that unless the majority of people believe you, support you, and then you also don't just become that overnight. It's a slow process, and it's a charismatic leader who feeds off the mob that produces those horrendous acts, because he's acting for the mob rather than the assumption that he did all that on his own. You have to realize that was a community. You should call him that. It was a mob that did that, and he was the speakerhead for it. But philosophy will play that way out that way over and over. And it's important to know that that's how that went down, because he killed himself. The opposite of that, when there truly is an evil leader who took over with raw power, let's say they use a military thing, those leaders usually die horrible deaths from the people rebelling and killing them. And that's just another archetypal story. We have lots of stories in different cultures that are passed down. They're meant to teach us this. The Bible is a collection of archetypes that repeat themselves over and over. And as are most religious texts that have survived the ages. And that's because they provide utility. If you just even wanted to separate it from the spiritual things that they bring. And that's what philosophy is, right? Philosophy is the analysis of these archetypal stories and then the creation of new ones or further clarity on the truths of existence. And a lot of those are derived, from everything that I just explained. And I think the further analysis of how these cryptocurrencies play into those, or how they mimic them, especially with the different ways that they're governed, because some of them, like proof of stake, is the more. Well, we're gonna do a class on that. When we do the class on that, we'll do that video, and then maybe after that, then we'll do another revisit of this after I have some more time to think about it. But I just wanted to put out these thoughts because I might soon reposition myself to more align with my thesis and my thoughts. But right now, I'm just thinking it out. I'm already very diverse. All my holdings are in the Discord. I think my Bitcoin position is only about 12% right now even. But I know there are some people who all they hold is Bitcoin. And you know what? I actually gotta update some of the philosophy stuff in here in the Bitcoin. You see, I hadn't finished this educational channel entirely because, like right now, I'm still thinking it out. The idea that it would persist, I guess I should reconfirm that I do understand the whole argument for it winning, because it is like a truer speech, because you can't manipulate the price. Therefore, it should always represent the true price of things, since that we can't change that. And then you would therefore think of fiat currencies, the US dollar, the euro, as enforced speech, and that would be inherently like not okay, right? But it would mean in Bitcoin was inherently good. But yeah. I guess I can't argue that, but I can't argue the other side either. I can't really pick either of those apart. Maybe I just need more time to think it out. But I wanted to share these ideas. Have you got a certain idea, a certain way of looking at this that's different than mine? Let me know in the Discord. Leave a comment down below. Like, subscribe to the channel. And I am going to actually send out a bunch of requests. And I'm hoping that starting next year that we can get, and we're going to be uploading a calendar into the Discord actually, first of all, but I'm also hoping that in the near future we will be doing podcasts and can find that's weird. someone just posted in the Discord. A nice schedule for people to come out, and we'll do podcasts with all types of figures, I think, and people. I think not even just people you recognize on YouTube, but I know a bunch of small business owners or impressive people that work behind the scenes, and I'd like to bring them on and talk with them about some stuff. So yeah, let me know what you think about that. And if anyone would be okay with recording a one-on-one mentoring session, also comment down below, and we'll do a free one-on-one, and I'm going to record it for the Discord. And if you are one of the refs, the answer is no. Word. All right. Well, thanks everyone. Let me know, and I hope you all are having a great day. I am super sick. I don't know if you could tell, but boy, I'm burning out near the end of this one. Y'all have a great one. I'll see you tomorrow.